Good morning and welcome to Friday morning's briefing here at We Are Sunderland. My name's Joe Ramage and I'm joined today again by Dom Shaw. How are you doing, Dom?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad. Not so bad. Plenty to talk about, as always, with Sunderland heading into the weekend with a game against Millwall. Plenty. We're going to talk about Mike Dodds' press conference, some of the injury news and what came from that. Like I say, a little bit on that Millwall game. But before we start, in case you haven't seen it yet, well, first of all, where have you been? But our latest competition, our biggest competition to date, plugged the other day, and you're going to see that constantly on our social channels. So make sure that you get involved. Unbelievable prize up for grabs here. You can win 2 Black Cats Bar season tickets for the 2024-25 season simply by subscribing to We Are Sunderland. It costs just £1 to subscribe, and you can be entered within a chance to win this fantastic prize worth over £1,600. Like I said the other day, season may not have gone the way that you wanted to, but what a chance for next season to go and watch the team play in the hospitality suite. Myself and Dom were up there earlier in the week, weren't we, watching the under-21s, and it'd be quite the prize, that, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, great view. Like you say, you would hope next season is going to be better than this season. I think the wise money would be on that being the case. It's a great prize. Yeah, it really is.
Great prize, and like I say, just £1 to subscribe. We'll plug this later on in the show as well. And before we also get started, I want to give a shout out to our partners, to Michael and the team down at the Fans Museum and the Prospects Opticians. So, Dom, you were at Mike Dodds' press conference yesterday. I guess, first of all, just what were your immediate takeaways from that?
I thought Dodds was really good. There's a few lines to come out of it. A couple that haven't been published yet, that are scheduled to go online and in the various papers on Saturday morning. So I won't give too much of a spoiler away there. But for what you might have seen or read or heard already, first of all, on injuries, kind of mixed news really, in that Corry Evans and Dennis Cirkin, he said Evans is likely to play. Cirkin maybe kind of not so much. He talked about his reluctance to rush him back. I think his kind of general thinking there was, he said, I'm being the spoiler basically. Dennis is desperate to play, but I'm urging caution on it. And I'm not a professional footballer. I'm not a professional athlete talking, but the kind of wise, well, if I can describe myself as such, the wise aspect thinking is, what's to gain from rushing him back now at the end of the season? Wouldn't it make more sense to let him get to the summer? We'll see on that one. Nazariy Rusyn, Sheffield Wednesday, maybe not expected to feature before then. Agialise, yeah, he'll play more between now and the end of the season, but he said it's the same with Patrick Roberts, really, in that he just has to be careful rushing them back. There's a fair few in the same boat, really, isn't there? We're coming back from long-term injuries, and there's clearly that balance between giving them, dangling that carrot and saying, yeah, we want you involved between now and the end of the season, but not pushing them, not expecting too much too soon, because the last thing you want at this stage, and with, let's be honest, so little on the line, is to potentially push them back again, isn't it, going into the summer?
Yeah, the Cirkin one's interesting in particular. We'll perhaps come on to the 3 that you mentioned individually, but Cirkin we'll start with. He's been a big miss, hasn't he? And you're speaking there in terms of not rushing players back. How much do you think the Agialise situation has probably impacted the decisions that have been made down this stretch? Because Cirkin, I've just looked there, Cirkin's played 8 games this season. He's been a big loss, but then you look at Niall Huggins, who's been missing on that side as well since December. Elise himself, who's only just come back. That left back area or that left wing back area has been very problematic for Sunderland, hasn't it? We've seen Callum Styles having to go out there, Leo Hjelde coming out there, January signings. Are there positions for either of them to be starting in? Certainly when everyone's fit, you would say that Cirkin's still probably your number one. It's just frustrating, isn't it? But I guess, yeah, how much do you think the Elise situation and his setback in the playoffs last year when they rushed him back has impacted what would happen with Cirkin, given the nature of the injury in the hamstring?
Yeah, I think it has. Some of them were in a tricky position last year, weren't they? In that you can completely understand why Elise was itching to get back in amongst it, and you can completely understand why Mowbray took the risk. If that game's a dead rubber at the end of the season, there's no way Tony Mowbray puts him in, is there? But it was needs must at the time. That's not the case now, so I do expect them. And I think you only have to look at the examples of Corry Evans, who's been back in training, probably a month, full training, a month now, has played for the 21s, but is still waiting to be involved in the squad. Clearly that they're not wanting to take any risks with them. And left back and left side of defence is interesting, really, isn't it? Because there's every chance Sunderland are going to be going from rags to riches in that department. You look at if providing there are no more hitches, providing there are no more setbacks between now and the start of next season, then suddenly you've got kind of a real group of quality players there jostling for position, haven't you?
But I think that is just as well to stay on Cirkin, given the impact that he had. Well, that he had since he's come in, really, in helping the club get out of League One, and then last season he was immense. I think it's coming up a year ago since when he scored the 2 goals down at West Brom. I think he chipped in with like 5 goals last season. And goals, with sport, well, that's so much this
big
season.
Goals as well.
Show. Yeah, like it's another outlet, isn't it? And that again, it's just something that Sunderland have absolutely missed this season.
It is, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because if you were say if the defenders you've got now are the defenders you've got next season, no one else comes in, just hypothetically, and everyone's fit. I know it's difficult, but what would be your first choice back four if you were going with a back four? What would be your first choice back four for the first game of next season? Take Huggins out the equation because Huggins clearly isn't going to be ready. But of the others, what would you go with?
It's probably you'd probably put Cirkin left back, and then you'd have the 3 that are there now, wouldn't you? In 09, Ballard and Hume. But then where do you fit Elise into that? It's like you say, you're almost going from rags to riches, aren't you? I know there's been plenty of sort of discourse about Luke O'Nine's position this season. Is he a centre back? Should he be playing in midfield? Could he go back over to right back like we saw in League One? When Elise's back in, is that something that opens up, or with the system that Sunderland are playing at the moment over the last week with the 5 at the back, does that allow Elise to come in as part of a 3 alongside O'Nien and Ballard next season? Certainly a strong back 5 then, isn't it? If you have those 3 as your centre backs and then Cirkin and Hume out on the wing backs, so it does provide a lot of options for whoever comes in, and then you've got to strike the balance with keeping players happy, don't you? When that comes to fruition, particularly then when you throw Huggins back in.
And on the theme of fullbacks, we talked to Dodds yesterday about Trai Hume, who, when you consider all the injury problems Sunderland have had this season, Hume has started every single game. And I think when I looked yesterday, he's missed 26 minutes of the Championship football this season. 22-year-old, quite remarkable, really. And Dodds was excellent on him. It was saying that, let's be honest, we signed him for peanuts. Was it 200,000? We signed him for peanuts. And yet now Dodds said, I don't think anyone can argue with this, he's undoubtedly one of the best fullbacks in the Championship. And he is, as Dodds said yesterday, undoubtedly in that group of players of when you look at Sunderland players who you think they're going to go on and play in the Premier League. Hume's undoubtedly there, isn't he? He's undoubtedly in that crop. And Dodds said yesterday, what we've got to do is firstly do everything in our power to keep hold of him for as long as possible. But he's a Premier League player in waiting. What we need to do is get there before he wants to go with somewhere else. We need to, and it's in the same boat with Patterson, Ballard, Clark's maybe in a slightly different position because he's maybe a year or 2 ahead of those players. But the challenge for Sunderland is go up with these players, isn't it? Not lose them to Premier League clubs.
Yeah, you've sort of taken the words out of my mouth there with him, but he, in a way, I don't know if you agree with this, he almost goes under the radar a little bit because you're drawn to Clark, you're drawn to Neil, you're drawn to Ballard, Patterson. He very much, as you say, he is in that bracket, and he does seem to go under the radar a little bit. I mean, you mentioned they're one of the best defenders in the Championship, or fullbacks rather. I think defensively, in terms of his tackles or his interceptions, I think he is actually top of one of those charts, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, he is one that does seem to go under the radar, but he is one where you can absolutely buy into what this model and what the process is as well, isn't it?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, what would it be worth now? Easy. He's a 22-year-old with an exemplary injury record, an international footballer who's been a key player for a team that were challenging for promotion last season and should have been this season, really. You could even say would have been had obviously decisions not been taken at December time. I think you're easily looking north of 7 million.
Yeah,
7, 8 pound.
I was possibly going to say maybe 5, but even then, you still, if he's coming in for sort of 200k, what sort of a increase that over 200% increase, So
because I think the other thing with him is it's his versatility.
Yeah.
This season he's been equally
left
as
back, centre
acceptable
back,
as right
yeah.
back, left back, playing at the right of a back three. And Dodds said yesterday he's desperate for a break. Really, he's desperate for a rest, and we need to make sure he has a good rest in the summer, because let's kind of not forget here, not only has he played all that football for Sunderland, but then when the break comes, he's going away and playing international football. It's been non-stop. It's been relentless for him. But Dodd said he could do with a break now, really, but I can't afford to take him out of the team. Again, 22-year-old, and I know we kind of maybe repeat ourselves with this, but I think because you've got 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds in the team, you forget that 22 in championship by championship standards is still very young. There aren't many 22-year-olds playing as much football and playing as crucial a role in kind of top-end championship sides. I know Sunderland aren't that at the minute, but top-end championship sides as what Trai Hume has done over the last couple of seasons.
No, absolutely that. And just looking at the game stats there as well, you're right in what you're saying. I think 39 minutes behind Anthony Patterson in terms of what he's played. And yeah, 22, it was the same with Dan Neil and Equa, where we've had conversations about they all of a sudden you're seeing your figures when in reality they probably shouldn't be. But he's a classic case of how he came in, he had to bide his time to get in. And once he's got in, he's very much just sort of grabbed his opportunity. In terms of if he was, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but if he does, say, go in further down the line, like with other players that are suggested, Pembele has come in recent weeks in that right wing-back area, obviously brought in last summer. Similar in a way I know injuries impacted this, but he's had to bide his time to get in. Could you see him being a replacement for Hume? Or, I mean, we've had the discussion about him being a full-back or a wing-back. I think Dodds himself has said, I couldn't necessarily play him at full-back at the moment, but do you think Pembele will be one that they'd say is in the building to replace him?
I think that what you've touched on there is the big question with him, isn't it? Can he play on the right of a four? I think he's ready made to this system they're playing now. It'll be interesting. I know we touched on this in a video earlier this week. It'll be interesting what Dodds does tomorrow, won't it? And whether he goes with a four or sticks with a five there. He kind of tripped himself up a little bit yesterday, almost like kind of dropped the hint that he might be going back to a four, but then also talked about how the five suits playing against Millwall. So I don't know would be the honest answer there. Maybe
feels like four, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe leans towards him going back to a four, and I think if that is the case, what's most likely is Hume goes back to the right and Pembele drops back again. But I think this kind of flirtation with the action really at this back end of the season will do Pembele the world of good going into the summer. He's got a taste for things. I think the way it's worked out for Pembele is probably what you'd hope for a player coming in and getting to grips with the Championship. Speakman touched on it earlier this season, didn't he? Maybe we need to be a bit clearer in our expectations of these players. Now, for the likes of Hamia and Mayenda and Rusyn, they had to be thrust straight in, and the expectation was there because Sunderland didn't have anyone else. Mason Burstow's been a huge disappointment. But in an ideal world, really, what you'd have had is a centre forward coming in and doing what Pembele has been able to do, just ease his way in. And you would hope this season in a full summer, you'll see now Sunderland are clear on where they need to work with him. He knows what to expect from the Championship, and you would hope that he's going to kick on next season. But while Hume is here, and Huggins and the rest of the defensive options, it feels like Pembele has got a mountain to climb, doesn't it, to get into the team regularly?
Yeah, it feels like a fair comment. You spoke a little bit there on strikers. We'll move on to that. Nazariy Rusyn doesn't seem to me like we might see him again this season. It would see him again. You spoke about, is it worth the risk? Mike Dodds mentioned possibly Sheffield Wednesday, but at that stage, what do you think?
Yeah, if there's any doubt at all, do you put him back in for Sheffield Wednesday? What's to gain from that? I think I'd be more surprised. Well, I would undoubtedly be more surprised if we saw Rusyn again this season than if we didn't. And then clearly we go into a huge summer for what happens with the centre forwards. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Burstow go back to Chelsea. He's been a real disappointment for whatever reason. It hasn't worked out for him this season. Mayenda, who I asked Dodds about, actually, funnily enough, yesterday, kind of what he makes of the loan, what the plan will be for him in the summer and next season. You would think Mayenda and Hamia, I look at them and think they probably both benefit from a year out on loan next season. But for that to be the case, you're probably going to have to sign 2 centre forwards, aren't you? You're going to have Rusyn, whoever comes in, and Dodds has been clear, hasn't he? Why can't Joe Bellingham be number 9 for this football club? Now, clearly, that's going to be a decision for whoever comes in to take charge. But if the new manager comes in and sees Bellingham as a 9, do you need 1 or 2 strikers? Clearly, you need 1. Do you need 2? If you were to get 2, then I think Hamir and Mayenda benefit from a loan.
I think you'd possibly need 2 anyway. Just if you think about Rusyn, there's been a lot of talk in the second half of the season, particularly under Michael Beale.
Is he a forward? Is he a wide?
Being the wide forward, yeah. And when you watch him, you can understand that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that out of the ones that came in last summer, out of the 4 that came in, he has been the most productive or threatens, some of his runs go unnoticed. But you can see that point of view that Michael Beale initially brought out in terms of saying, is he a wide forward? I mean, I just want to touch on Rusyn there. 21 appearances, 9 starts, just under 800 minutes of action, 2 goals, 1 assist. I mean, he has been the best of the 4, but that therein is just exactly what Sunderland's problems have been this season in terms of you brought 4 players in to try and replace the goals and assists that were left through Ahmad and Ross Stewart over the course of the last 12 months. Hasn't happened, has it?
No, and to say he's been the best of the 4, I don't think it's a compliment.
No, I agree.
Let's be honest, it's a pretty low standard that we're setting there. I think Rusyn's done okay considering his challenges and adapting. Every manager who's been in place this season has talked about the language barrier, haven't they, and the difficulties there. But I completely agree with you. And I know it's not as clear cut as what it was, say, 5-10 years ago, because forward lines are a lot more fluid now. But he's undoubtedly a forward rather than a striker, isn't he? And I do think someone need a striker. I think they need someone to play off, something to play off, a natural striker. It is funny, really, that Bellingham is probably the closest they've got, even though it might not come natural to him, which I think says a lot about his game understanding, really, and his maturity. I thought Burstow had the look of being a great signing when he signed. For whatever reason, that hasn't worked out. Hamir isn't ready. Mayenda. Mowbray liked Mayenda, didn't he? Mowbray clearly saw something in Mayenda, but again, he's raw and he's not ready. And there was even talk of, is Mayenda better suited to coming off the flank, isn't he, and not playing through the middle? So I'd agree with you. I think when we look back at the way recent windows have worked out, let's get 1 over the line first. But in an ideal world, I think Sunderland probably need 2 centre forwards. What else do you think? Clearly, that's the priority. What are the other areas you think need work?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, centre forward 2 for me, probably in there. We spoke about the midfielder as well. That central midfielder, that number 6, especially if Evans is to go in the summer. He's a player we'll come on to in a second. So that is another key area. But like those 2 positions are positions that have needed filling for the last 3 transfer windows. Yeah. As soon as Ross Stewart went down against Fulham in that FA Cup tie last January, Sunderland needed another strike at that window. At the same time, they still and Evans obviously the week before against Middlesbrough, they needed that number 6. Then they haven't really been addressed. I know the window was very condensed by that point. You only had sort of a week, 10 days to sort that, so which can be troublesome. But you had part of that window, and then you had the summer window and the January window. And I think the January window arguably might be the most disappointing out of them, given that the way the season had gone and those areas were still key in terms of needing to be filled. And you brought 3 players in who it's hard to sort of put your finger on were they brought in to be first teamers now, or where's the best position. I mean, Styles being the perfect example, bringing him on loan, he's probably been the best of the 3. But when the head coach comes out and says that we're not quite sure where his best position is, that to me just sets alarm bells ringing. And it's not necessarily on the player as well, because he has been shuffled around in his career, whether it be Millwall or Barnsley. Maybe you want to focus on him being in that central midfield, like what he plays for his national team with Hungary. That's something that I'm quite interested in this weekend, whether he comes into that area of the field or we see him a little bit more, because he did drop in there towards the end against West Brom just to tighten things up when Sunderland did revert back to a 4 against the 10 men. But yeah, you look at Hjelde and Mundell, is Mundell then going to go on and kick on and be Clark's replacement? We're just talking about Rusyn there coming in off the left. If Clark goes, does he go into that category then? Is he fighting for that place? Hjelde, he's been forced to play out at left back. Doesn't seem as though that is his comfortable position. And then even we spoke about at the start of the show, didn't we? Who's your starting defence next season? Hjelde probably doesn't get in there at the moment. So the January window for me was disappointing. And it has to be addressed this summer, like the recruitment this summer. Because then if you throw in the 4 strikers that we talked about last summer, the recruitment has to be better this summer. It has to be if Sunderland are going to kick on.
Styles is an interesting one, isn't he? Because we talked there about the options that Sunderland are going to potentially have at left back or left wing back come the start of next season, and then you think centre midfield is an area that they're likely to strengthen. Mike Dodds has already said that Chris Rigg going forward is a midfielder rather than a forward, a more kind of a wide right player like he has been playing, or a 10. He sees him more as a midfielder. So you're potentially bolstering your midfield options by 2 there. It feels like Styles. I think versatility can help and hinder a player. It feels like Styles could do with nailing down a position, I think. Otherwise, he's just going to become a support act, or maybe that's a bit maybe that's a bit harsh, but someone who can fill in various different areas without making one specific role his own.
I mean, he came out and said to us in the press after, I think it was the Swansea game, after his first start, that midfield is his position. But naturally, like any player will say, you can stick me anywhere and I'll play there. But I mean, would you sign him? I know there's an agreement in place in the loan, to trigger it. Do you think Sunderland should sign Callum Styles?
I think it's difficult to say, because I think it's hard to judge him. I think it's harsh to judge him. I think so if you're judging it on what we've seen from him, maybe not. But if you're judging it on what we hear about him, what we've read about him, what he's done elsewhere, what type of player he can be and is, then potentially yes. And I do think the other thing to bear in mind here is the surgery he'd had just before he signed. He admitted when he came, he was probably further ahead of schedule than he was. And that was probably a willingness and a desire to get the move that he talked about being desperate to secure. So I think you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt there. I think I'd lean towards signing him, because for all I said, versatility can hinder a player. Clearly, if you get an injury crisis like you've had this season, and there's nothing to say Sunderland won't have more problems next year. Clearly, we hope that's not the case, but they might well do. Then Styles is going to come in handy. I think he'd be a useful addition, but I think you need to sign on top of him. So if you bring Styles in, I still think you need to strengthen in midfield. I don't think that's your midfield signing.
Yeah, I agree. And just to wrap up on the midfield bit and the injury news, Evans, we spoke about him the other day in terms of a contract, possibly not. But do you think, or would you like to see him feature in these final 3 games?
Well, Dodds all but confirmed that he will. Now, whether it's tomorrow, I'm not sure. The 21s play Liverpool on Monday night. Would it make more sense for him maybe to get a run out then and then feature at Watford next week? I think that's more likely. But Dodds all but confirmed yesterday he will play a part between now and the end of the season. I don't think what happens between now and the end of the season will have a major impact on Sunderland's decision making. I think that decision has to be made already, really, doesn't it? On what he offers, what role he'll bring, what he might not bring, how much will he play. But I hope he's back between now and the end of the season, because on a personal level, he's had a rotten time for such a long time out, hasn't he? It's such a key part of his career as well, really. As he's approaching the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Echo those thoughts. That'll bring us nicely into segue in before we go into the Millwall game. Just another quick plug for our latest competition here at We Are Sunderland. You can subscribe for just £1 and be in with a chance to win a fantastic prize, a pair of Black Cats Bar season tickets for next season. All you have to do is go to our website. I'm going to pop the link into our description, so they should come up wherever you're watching this podcast currently. Get involved, subscribe now, just £1, and you'll win with a chance to win this fantastic prize for next season. You've got until May the 10th, I think it is, the competition closes, so still plenty of time to get involved with that. Just £1, great prize there. On to Saturday then, Dom, Millwall. what are you expecting from them? Because they're a bit of a different proposition over the last couple of weeks compared to what they might have been. Neil Harris came in pretty much the same time as Mike Dodds was put back in interim charge. I think Millwall are 9th in the form guide in the same time, won 5 of the 10. Sunderland won 2 of the 10. 2 of those 5 that Millwall have won have been at Southampton and at home to Leicester. I don't know. Do you think that this is going to be a kind of Millwall that that have that bit of bite about them that we would associate with a Millwall team compared to what we might have seen under Joe Edwards earlier in the season?
Well, I was going to say I watched. I was at Millwall for Millwall Middlesbrough earlier in the season, and it wasn't a team that you'd associate with being Millwall. If you went blind and you were watching the team purely on what type of football you were seeing, you would never have guessed that it was a Millwall side you were watching. Certainly not a Millwall side at home. They played some really good stuff, but clearly it didn't work for Edwards. We've seen countless examples, haven't we, of how difficult it is for a manager to go in and completely transform the whole philosophy of, I think, not just a side, but a club mid-season, in the middle of a season. That didn't work out. I think credit to Millwall for going back to Harris, because if that backfires, you almost run the risk of being a laughing stock, really. Like an easy option, a manager who's been there in the past, was in the lower leagues, was managing in League Two at the start of the season. But Harris understands the club, doesn't he? And whether that'll work long term, whether that's just kind of a short term fix, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But there's certainly more Millwall now, aren't there? Which I would imagine anyone associated with Millwall will take as a big compliment. A couple of weeks ago, they looked like they were getting sucked back in, didn't they? Yeah. They'd had an upturn, then they looked like they were getting sucked back in. They've had a couple of good results, and they look pretty sound now. I still think they'll come up to Sunderland with bite. I still think they'll come up to Sunderland with, not thinking the job is done. But yeah, I think their work. I think that they're there, aren't they? And fair play to Harris for going in and getting a result, because they were on a steep drop, weren't they, when he went in, and he got his first win was against Southampton, wasn't it? Away. So, yeah. Fair play to him for leading them away, because God, I wouldn't like to predict what's going to happen at the bottom in the next few weeks, but he's kind of lifted them out of that, hasn't he?
Yeah, it just sort of harps me back. It takes me back sort of 20 years. That Millwall team that pestered Sunderland so often. They beat them in the FA Cup semi-final. And Dennis Wise, Harris, Cahill was playing for them, Livermore, Eiffel. It strikes me as though
tenacious bite, niggling.
That he'll have instilled that over these 10 games, and like you say, 5 wins, 9th in the form guide, 17 points from 30. It's just about job done. I think they're 6 above it with 3 to play. Even if they don't get results, it's probably going to be a big ask for them to drop now. Does that help Sunderland away on Saturday?
I know this is cheap and lazy. I think the first goal. I think the first goal's important, because Sunderland have had a couple of really, really positive results and performances on the road, but clearly results at home need to improve. And if Sunderland were to go 1-0 down, then it would understandably the frustration would understandably set in again. I think what you want to see, the challenge for Sunderland clearly is that they're going to have to go at Millwall, aren't they? They're going to have to pick Millwall apart. Whereas against West Brom and Leeds, they were able to sit back, really soak it up. It wasn't on them to go and do the damage, whereas it will be this weekend. That's a challenge for Sunderland, and I think that's the tactical talent challenge for Dodds that we alluded to, isn't it? The next 2 games are interesting, aren't they? Because Millwall aren't safe yet, but it's 3 teams, Sunderland, Millwall and Watford, who are there. There's nothing really, very little to play for. The one thing, with Watford and Sunderland clearly is the uncertainty of the manager situation moving forward. But you would hope, we'd take that Blackburn result out, like we talked about earlier this week. That's the anomaly, really, isn't it? What Sunderland need now is to string a few results together between now and the end of the season, just to take a bit of momentum and feel good factor into the summer after what has been a desperately disappointing campaign.
Particularly at home as well. The home form was their strongest asset this year. It flipped from last year, where the away form was sort of what laid the foundations to get into the playoffs. The home form started really well this year, dropped off quite a bit over the last couple of months. Don't think they've won since that Plymouth game. Need to just try and rectify that and get a couple of wins. I know Mike Dodds did touch on that, didn't he, in the presser?
Yeah. Like it feels like a no drama 2-0 win is exactly what the doctor ordered, didn't it, at home? Just a routine home comfortable 2-0 win. It's such a difficult one to call because it's such a different challenge to recent weeks, and because yes, Sunderland have been solid in recent weeks, but they haven't been free scoring. Goals have been hard to come by. Dodds has clearly tried to strike that balance. So are they able to go and pick apart a team that is stubborn and organised and difficult to break down? I think if Sunderland can get a result on Saturday, it's a big boost, really. It's a big box ticked.
Do you think they will?
Yeah, 1-0. I think it'll be a bit edgy. I don't think it'll be a great watch, but I think they'll just do enough. I think 1-0. What about you?
Yeah, I'm edging towards something like that. I totally agree with exactly what you said there. Just need a routine, just get in, get it out, and then sort of move on, and just to build up that bit of confidence again, and just get another result on the board at home. Just before we go, I'd be remiss of me not to ask for your input on yesterday's news with regards FA Cup replays. Should it happen? Is it nonsense?
Nonsense. Yeah, absolute nonsense. Every now and again, a rule or a law or a change comes in that if you go and ask 100 football fans in the street what they'll make of it, how many of them would say, yeah, scrap the replays? A handful. And I think that tells you everything, really. It's nonsense. It's once again, we're pandering to the big clubs with all the money and their kind of desires, when in actual fact, what we're moving away from what the FA Cup's all about, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, Sunderland's most historic run.
Yeah.
Replays in that 73 run.
Yeah, how many examples in recent years? Yeah, exactly. Countless examples. Yeah, dreadful. I hope it gets overruled, but I can't see it happening. I thought, sorry to put in, Tranmere's statement yesterday, I thought was excellent. I thought they nailed it. I think if every club could just say, do you mind if we copy and paste that, because we echo the sentiment.
Yeah, there's a couple of clubs coming out, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Thank you for your time this morning, as ever, Dom. Really appreciate that. Just another quick plug for our competition over at We Are Sunderland. £1 to subscribe to win with a chance to win Black Cats Bar season tickets for the 2024-25 campaign. All the details are on our website now. Get involved. Still got a couple of weeks to be in with a chance to win that incredible prize for next season. We will be back on Monday to review what we hope will be a home win at the Stadium Light as Sunderland face Millwall. As ever, thank you very much for joining us.